The Scientologist sect is one of the strangest and most unusual religious organizations. Unlike most sects, it is not based on Christianity, although its symbol is also a cross. It appeared in the middle of the last century and was created by American writer Ron Hubbard. Today we will talk about it and consider 10 interesting facts about Scientology. Let me begin with a brief description of the beliefs of Scientologists to pique your interest. They believe that 70 million years ago there was an advanced civilization of humans in our galaxy. Despite their technological advancement, the appearance of their buildings, clothing, hairstyles, and generally everything resembled the American era of the 1970s. This civilization had spaceships outwardly identical to the American Douglas DC-8 aircraft produced at the time, but with a space engine. The ruler of this galactic empire, whose name was Xenu, was evil and sought to reduce the population of his empire. The humans tried to rebel, but their revolt was crushed. Xenu then placed these people in a frozen state on an uninhabited planet that later became our Earth. Here, on the lifeless Earth, volcanoes were dropped by hydrogen bombs, destroying all the humans. Their immortal souls, called Titans in Scientology, scattered all over the Earth. Later, these Titans were enslaved and forcibly shown movies depicting violence, crucifixions, torture, etc. According to Scientology, these Titans hold these memories even though it never really happened. When a newborn child is born, a TED end enters its body and becomes its soul. A single child can contain many Titans, which are the source of all our neuroses and psychological traumas, called engrams in Scientology. Scientology offers techniques and practices by which one can pump one's Titan, rid it of engrams, and return it to its original and pure state, which Scientology calls clear. One of these techniques is called Dianetics. In this video, we will look at all of these aspects in more detail. Who created Scientology, such a strange belief system that looks a lot like science fiction? The creator was the American science fiction writer Ron Hubbard. At least he was a writer before he became the founder of the new religion. That happened in the middle of the 20th century. As a young man, Hubbard served in the Navy and, judging by reports from his superiors, was no different. He was characterized as problematic in discipline and overly narcissistic. Nevertheless, he rose to the rank of officer and commanded a small gunboat during World War II. Hubbard once used up all of his boat's ammunition attacking 2 German U-boats, although it was later discovered that it was just a log floating on the sea. Also, he ordered the shelling of a small Mexican island in the mistaken belief that enemies were there, even though Mexico was a U.S. ally. After these incidents, he was removed from his position as commander of the ship. Despite this, as a cult leader, he told his followers about his fictional exploits during the war, that he was a hero, fought in many battles, traveled to almost all countries, and had many encounters. He also claimed to have been mortally wounded and blinded as a result of being on the high seas for long periods of time in the blazing sun, but with the help of Scientology principles, he healed himself and survived. However, all of his actions in the military were well documented, and it turned out that none of his stories were true. Hubbard, despite serving in the Navy, never left U.S. territorial waters. But the Scientologists simply stated that all documents proving Hubbard's heroism in the war had been destroyed and hidden by FBI agents in order to discredit him and cover up his service in secret units and his participation in secret missions. After the war, Hubbard became interested in the occult, the study of religions and psychology. In his own words, he was even a member of a sect that practiced ritual copulation on a special altar in order to conceive and bring Christ into our world. Hubbard later married a member of the sect. He then began writing books in the science fiction genre. There was a Great Depression at the time, and Hubbard was writing books to make some money. He was writing a lot of text, and his wife, in interviews, said that he was typing so fast that he had to wipe the sweat off the typewriter keys. Ron Hubbard is listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the author of the largest number of books. He wrote 1,084 books. But even though Hubbard's writing wasn't making much money, his wife said that to make more money, he needed to create his own religion. Hubbard decided to do just that. and began writing Dianetics, the new science of mental health. He wanted to create a system of knowledge and methodology to treat people's mental problems. Hubbard considered his system to be scientific, but the scientific community immediately after its appearance recognized Dianetics as a pseudoscience, a mixture of psychoanalysis, psychological myths, Eastern religions, and science fiction. It is important to note that Hubbard had no psychological or medical training and was not a scientist. Therefore, it was impossible to simply create a new science. The main idea of Dianetics is that the human mind is divided into two parts: the analytical mind and the reactive mind. The analytical mind is a perfect computer that remembers everything and always draws only rational conclusions. The reactive mind, on the other hand, remembers all the bad things that happened to a person in the past. Such memories cause pain, contribute to mental illness, and interfere with life. These memories are called engrams, and Dianetics teaches that by getting rid of them, one can achieve a state of clearness, when the mind is completely under control and free from fears, phobias, and other psychological problems. It is important to note that Dianetics and Scientology are different things. Dianetics is a pseudo-scientific method of psychotherapy invented by Hubbard, and Scientology is a religion, also invented by Hubbard, which includes Dianetics and many other aspects. In Dianetics and Scientology, engrams are worked through a procedure called auditing. It resembles a psychotherapy session. During an auditing session, there is an auditor, that is, the person who is auditing, and there is a pre-clear, that is, the person being audited. During the auditing, the pre-clear is required to mentally revisit situations from the past that could have potentially caused their psychological trauma. According to Dianetics, the pre-clear mentally revisits these situations over and over again, remembering more and more details. The pre-clear reduces the power of the engram on himself, and it gradually goes away. Scientology uses a special device called an emitter during auditing. It measures the conductivity of current through the skin to determine the pre-clear's emotional reactions. The emitter is used to detect the engram and determine its strength. However, it is important to note that the scientific community completely refutes the effectiveness of auditing. Many studies show that auditing is dangerous to people's mental health, especially if they already have problems of this nature. However, Scientologists morally pressure pre-clears to tell their deepest secrets. It is important to note that all information obtained by the auditor during the audit is recorded and stored in the Scientology archives. It is also worth adding that Hubbard originally claimed auditing and emitter were scientific. However, after science disproved their scientificity, emitters were recognized as ritual objects in the US, and a special inscription is placed on them to indicate that they are not a medical device, but a religious attribute. There were no auditors or emitters in the original Dianetics. They were introduced by Hubbard after the creation of the religion of Scientology. The Dianetics book was on the bestseller list for 2 years, but then its popularity plummeted, as people didn't get what Hubbard had promised them from it. Lawsuits began to pour in, and he almost lost the copyright to the Dianetics brand. Scientists, psychologists, and psychiatrists unanimously recognized Dianetics as a fictitious and bogus science. Hubbard decided to completely distance himself from science and psychology and create a religion. That's when Scientology came into being. The word is a combination of 2 Greek words and can be translated as the science of knowledge. The symbol of Scientology is a cross, but despite this, the religion has nothing to do with Christianity. This cross has 8 ends, which symbolizes the 8 dynamics, one of the key concepts in Scientology. Scientologists believe that humans are made up of 3 parts: body, mind, and spirit, which they call the Titan or immortal essence. Hubbard originally denied the existence of reincarnation, but with the growing number of followers reporting memories from past lives, he changed doctrine and recognized that reincarnation exists. Hubbard prided himself on the fact that Scientology, unlike other religions, was constantly being updated and adjusted rather than having a fixed dogma. He developed a system of spiritual development for Scientologists that includes many levels and requires the purchase of courses from Scientologists. The higher the level, the greater the cost of the course. It also requires going to auditing on a regular basis. It is important to note that the scientific community refutes the effectiveness of Scientology and auditing. Many believe that Scientology is a sect that attracts people by offering them solutions to problems using questionable techniques. In addition, to reach the highest level in Scientology, one would need to spend about $1 million on courses in auditing. Remember, at the very beginning I talked about the story of the galactic ruler Xenu, who dumped frozen ancient humans into volcanoes and destroyed them with hydrogen bombs. According to Scientology, the souls of humans appeared on Earth. You probably think that all Scientologists know about this story and believe in it, just as Christians believe in the myth of Adam and Eve. But they don't. The knowledge of Xenu and Scientology is secret and available only to those who have reached a high level called Operating Titan 3. Only after reaching this level will Scientologists be told this fantastic story. By the time a Scientologist reaches this level, he is already fully immersed in this reality and believes in the Scientology teachings. Otherwise, he wouldn't be spending so much money. Therefore, this fantasy story does not seem absurd to him. His mind is already prepared. His brainwashed, if you will. Naturally, if the story of Xenu were told at the very first Scientology lecture, most people would laugh and not listen anymore. That is the attitude that is being formed. But everything happens gradually. Now the question many people have is, if knowledge of Xenu is so widespread among ordinary people, including an episode of South Park, how can it be that low-ranking Scientologists don't know about it? Easy. If a low-level Scientologist reads about it on the internet and asks his older fellow Scientologist, the older brother will say it's all nonsense. There really was no Xenu, and it was all made up by the media to make Scientologists look like fools. Naturally, the neophytes don't believe it. And even if you go to a Scientologist armed with this knowledge and ask him about it, he will still say he has never heard of it and that it is all nonsense. By the mid-60s, Hubbard already had tens of thousands of followers and was making tens of millions of dollars from them. However, he began having tax problems that threatened his imprisonment. Looking for a solution, he came up with the idea of buying 3 old passenger ships, since he had plenty of money, and founded an organization in English called Sea Org. He conceived of it as the ultimate governing body of the Church of Scientology, with only the most reliable and advanced Scientologists serving directly under him. He himself became captain of this 3-ship squadron, which was constantly on voyages to avoid prosecution by U.S. tax collectors. To join the Sea Organization, its members must sign a contract for 1 billion years, with the expectation that in future lives they will return to serve in it again and again. Hubbard and his followers spent several years at sea, mostly sailing the Mediterranean. During this time, he devised new levels of initiation into Scientology and researched ancient civilizations. As time passed, however, more and more countries prohibited Scientology ships from entering their ports. As a result, Hubbard decided to return to the United States, where he hid from the tax authorities and lived in hiding for the rest of his life. The maritime organization still exists, but its activities are now conducted ashore. Members of the organization wear naval military uniforms and address each other as Sir. Even if it is a woman, they have strict Navy discipline and work for the church 12 hours a day without receiving any pay. They have the right to marry, but they are not allowed to have children. If they already have children, they are placed in a special children's boarding school of the Scientology Cadet Corps. Members of the Sea Organization receive all Scientology courses for free, which makes it attractive to many people. The organization has its own large ship called the Free Winds, which no longer sails and is permanently docked in the port of the island of Curaçao in the Caribbean Sea. It is aboard this ship that initiation to the highest levels of Scientology is possible, and nowhere else. The Church of Scientology is an organization that knows how to defend itself. As we know, the best defense is offense. In the mid-1970s, Scientologists conducted a massive special operation in which 1,000 Scientologists infiltrated various government agencies to gather dirt on those employees who posed a threat to the Church of Scientology. This took place not only in the US, but in 30 other countries. In the US, this operation ended with the arrest of dozens of Scientologists for espionage and illegal information gathering. However, this operation helped the sect silence critics and detractors in the government because Scientologists had dirt on them. Compromise is Scientology's most important weapon. For example, during auditing, a pre-clear tells the auditor all his secrets, and this information is recorded and archived. If a particularly high-ranking Scientologist wants to leave the church, he is reminded that the organization has a lot of dirt on him that could fall into the wrong hands or become public. Because of this, many are hesitant to leave the church for fear of such a thing. In addition, Scientologists in the US have managed to beat the IRS. Normally, religious organizations in the US are exempt from paying taxes, and the same is true for the Church of Scientology. In the 1980s, the US Federal Internal Revenue Service wanted to strip the Church of Scientology of its status as a religious organization because it was found that a lot of money was spent there for the personal enrichment of its leaders rather than for socially important projects. Scientologists could not allow this to happen and filed civil suits against the IRS on various grounds. As a result, tens of thousands of such suits were filed, requiring significant resources and time from officials. Eventually, the U.S. Federal Internal Revenue Service gave up and left the Church of Scientology its tax-exempt status. Scientologists threw a massive party to mark the occasion. There are celebrities in the Church of Scientology, the most famous of which are actors John Travolta and Tom Cruise. They have both been members of the church for a long time, over 20 years, and they constantly tell everyone how much it has changed their lives for the better. However, there are testimonies from several high-ranking former Scientologists that Travolta once wanted to leave the Church of Scientology, but was prevented from doing so by the threat of publicizing information about him obtained during auditing. Such information could have completely ruined his career, so he stayed. Tom Cruise is a close friend of the current leader of the Church of Scientology, David Miscavige. Former Scientologists tell us that everything is done for Tom Cruise in the church to keep him happy. So he only says good things to the organization, which he actually does publicly. He denies all the bad things that happen in the church, even though there are some scary things that happen there. For example, if an entire family is a member of the Church of Scientology and one of the family decides to leave the church, the rest of the family is forced to cut off all contact with him. This is a common practice of Scientologists and leads to the destruction of families, just like other religious organizations such as Jehovah's Witnesses. After Ron Hubbard's death in 1986, his chief assistant, David Miscavige, became the sect's leader. He has been its leader ever since. The sect has a lot of money and owns a lot of luxury real estate all over the world. In some countries, it is officially recognized as a religion. In others, it has to pay taxes, and in some it is banned. The number of sect members is steadily falling. Scientologists themselves claim that there are now millions of Scientologists in the world, but many independent researchers agree that the number of Scientologists was at its peak in the mid-80s when there were about 100,000 of them. Currently, experts believe there are no more than 25,000 Scientologists worldwide, which is a very small number compared to the Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses. Thus, the bad reputation of this organization is doing its job. And to continue the topic, I'd like to recommend that you watch my videos. I will provide the links below. If you like the videos, please subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. It will help a lot in promoting my videos. Thank you.